Hey, yo, it's Thursday. Welcome back to the TMBA podcast. If you run a location-independent business, know that today you are joined by thousands of others who are doing the same. You can learn more about what we do at tropicalmba.com or dynamitecircle.com. I want to also give a warm shout out to the good people over at Wayfront.com, formerly SPP. They help you scale your productized service agency without the tool sprawl. It's a very simple all-in-one solution to help you scale your agency. Since we're talking agencies today, why don't you click on over to wayfront.com and see what they're up to. So today's episode is inspired by a lot of bootstrappers in 2026 looking to expanding out into paid ads as that next layer of customer acquisition. Pick this up down in DC, Mexico. It's easier than ever to build creative or to do competitive research. So I thought as many of us consider what paid ads might look like in 2026, we'd invite an expert onto the show. Take a little money to make some money, get some of that sweet ROAS juice. Today's guest is Max Sinclair. He is the founder of Snowball Creations, a paid ads agency, and more recently, SaaSadsStudio.com. We'll speak about that pivot later on in the episode. But this episode is really for those of you who are currently spending less than $30,000 a year on ads. We're going to discuss some tips, how we can get started, and also some lessons we can learn from those with much larger ad spends. We'll talk about the first steps you can take if you're looking to start or scale ad campaigns, some of which are very easy wins that you can implement right after listening to the episode. And some tips will require us to roll up those sleeves a little bit. We'll also discuss how AI are affecting ads in 2026. Max has been running Snowball Creations for 8 years now, so I wanted to spend the second half of the episode talking about his experience running a location-independent agency with a team, how he charges clients, different models for doing so, the most important skill that he's focused on in running an agency. We'll talk about how he's used AI to build a product out of his core agency, which is something many agency owners are seeking to do in 2026. We'll also touch on the biggest financial mistake he's made running an agency and how you can avoid it. All that in today's episode and more with today's guest, Max Sinclair. Let's roll it.
So my name is Max Sinclair. I have an ads agency called Snowball Creations. I've been doing now for over 8 years. And over the last 6 months or so, I've been building the SaaS Ads Studio, which is a kind of done for you, do it yourself, kind of all in on the AI approach to doing ads.
We were talking before the call. You said ads are mental right now. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think it's a strange, absolutely mental place right now because obviously everyone in the DC community, I think after your DC Mexico especially, is completely Claude-pilled, and you can do so many amazing things with that, and you can learn so much. You can create campaigns faster than ever. You can optimize those campaigns. And then at the same time, though, the risk of AI is that it makes you feel like you can do anything, but not necessarily in a way that's going to work. And so there's this very difficult kind of playground right now where people are trying to use AI to do all sorts of things, and it's extremely powerful, but at the same time, it has a lot of risk around that. And so it's just a mental place to be. Like, there's people like myself trying to completely automate the process where I can, and then at the same time, kind of reinvent what does an agency mean and do. So yeah, just so many different angles you can play with, and everything is changing at this moment.
Well, Max, without further ado, let's jump into our your top five paid acquisition tips in order of sophistication, starting with beginner. Beginner would be that $12,000 annual budget, or the founder, like myself maybe, who's thinking about swiping that credit card or hiring an agency like yours. What types of products and services are best suited for ads?
So again, it comes back to the biggest thing is, are you competitive within your environment? And so skincare is, famously huge within ads. Like, all skincare brands run ads, but there are skincare brands which do not work with ads. And so again, it comes back to are you genuinely competitive within your space? Of course, like there's some golden rules. People like Rob Walling are very good at this, talking about the SaaS side of things. So if you're a B2B company, if you're not doing, say, there's numbers that he gives which are much more specific, but let's say 5 to 10,000 LTV. If you're down at, say, a 500 LTV and you're in the B2B space, like again, I go back to competitiveness, we've got Monday.com, and maybe you're a niche version of Monday.com and you do a little bit of Monday.com, but also your pricing is way lower than them. Well, then you just will never have a chance within Google Ads or Facebook Ads to try to claim that. I think the other thing that's important is understanding which platform for your business. So lots of people might think that ads don't work because they tried Facebook ads when they should have done Google, or they tried Google instead of Facebook, etc. The classic question I always ask, the very first one is it an inspiration purchase or not? So if it's an inspiration purchase, if you need to inspire someone to make that decision, then you have to go with Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads or another form of display ads. But those are harder. They are ultimately inspiring someone to purchase. You're breaking their daily routine to make that decision. Whereas Google search, the reason why the whole community has SEO is probably their biggest, marketing channel, is because someone's searching to make that purchase, whether it's with AI nowadays or SEO. Either way, that is so valuable, that buying intent. So generally my advice is to start with Google search or shopping, depending on if you're e-commerce, obviously, or B2B, and then move towards display later. But that's, again, another really important decision in terms of like what product works. Well, it's like which platform works for your product is a better question, I'd say.
A lot of us operate as a one of one in our minds. We don't think about competition all that regularly. And so now you're essentially saying to start with ads, we start with that competitive lens and we work backwards from there. Mm-hmm. All right. So our second tip for the beginner, the 1K monthly spend, is how to select a channel. So you started in on that. I'm curious as to, you talking about Facebook and Google a lot. Historically, I've seen a lot of our customers have success on frontier channels. So I even wrote down a note the other day. I was like, make sure you're one of the first people to be advertising on ChatGPT, that sort of thing. How much do you value these frontier opportunities? How far deep do you guys go in the bucket with your clients versus focusing on the legacy players?
Exactly. So firstly to say, I'm definitely more of a DCer in the sense of I'm extremely rebellious. So I don't like Google reps. I don't like the Facebook reps. I'm definitely not an advocate for them because they're, my backbone or something. So I'm all in if I can find someone who's going to beat Facebook or Google. That's the first thing to say. And the reality though is that we test all the time, and all of the others for now most of the time suck. That's the short answer. So we've tried, whether it's e-commerce, people are always talking about, say, Pinterest is this exciting, interesting thing. And maybe you've got a niche design product, so it fits really nicely with Pinterest. Or maybe you've got a very young audience, and so you think TikTok's the move, or whatever it might be. The reality is that actually when we put money down and we also really put effort into finding consultants and individuals who are mastering that platform, we still do not beat the big players. There's a reason why more and more money is going into Facebook ads every year, and Google ads is still the giant that it is, and it's because they work.
So what are our S-tier channels? And let's go down to the dregs.
So for B2B, the S tier is 100% Google. Google is the big giant. The other one I would put in S tier, which is underrated for sure, is Microsoft ads. So Microsoft is, 10% as big as Google, but it's cheaper. There's less competition, and there is older people on there, which generally is a good thing. So we really, really enjoy Microsoft ads. So those I would put in the S tier. I would also put Facebook realistically in the S tier for B2B too. And on the e-commerce side of things, Facebook and Google, again, those are the S tier platforms. There's no comparison to them. There's quite a significant gap between those two and the rest.
When you say Facebook, Max, are you saying Instagram as well?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. So the Facebook platform, so Facebook and Instagram together. Yeah, exactly. And then From there, when we go down a level, I would say TikTok is exciting. Like there is definitely opportunity in TikTok if you're e-commerce, if you're more of an impulse buy, and also generally if you have bigger budgets. Like I like to talk about big budget advice and small budget advice. I would say TikTok is still a big budget advice move. So if we have a client spending 100K, then yes, we will do TikTok as part of this mix. But if you're spending anything under like 20, 30K, you should just be doing way more Google and Facebook. That's all you should be thinking about. And then I'd say the only other ones to consider, there obviously is LinkedIn ads, which is very interesting if you're B2B. Again, I would describe it as kind of the scaling opportunity more for a B2B brand, just because it's expensive. Like the CPCs are very high. I do think there's a genuine reason for that though. It's because the targeting is so tight. Like in Facebook, you have to guess who your audience is and Facebook figures it out. But with LinkedIn, they have this amazing data set because you put your whole CV in there and your whole company's information in there. And so you can obviously target for that. So I do think LinkedIn is an underrated one. My least favorites would be Pinterest. It's really good at making it look like you're making money as well. Like it has this super generous attribution system. So you're like, cool, I've made hundreds this month, but it's just someone flying past a pin at some point in this wall of pins. And Pinterest is like, yeah, that's me. This was, this was my claim. Yeah, I think X is very often a miss compared to hit. I think it's chaotic. So maybe when we release this episode, things will have changed with Elon Musk flying all over the place every week. But at this exact moment, as of recording, I think X is a bit of a waste of time as well, to be honest.
All right, Max, we've talked about what types of products and services. We've talked about the channels. Let's get into intermediate. What are some tips for those already spending significant money?
So I think when you're spending big money, I think that's when we switch to big budget advice. And so the big mistake that small budget advice people do is trust the algorithm and trust the big advice of these really cool YouTubers. But once you get big, that's the stuff to listen to. So the algorithms really kick in. So whether it's Google ads, Facebook ads, Microsoft ads, you're getting to the point where you've got so many conversions pumping through this system that then the human brain, my human brain, even my massive, big, amazing ads manager's brain is not as good as Google or Facebook or LinkedIn's algorithm. So we have to accept letting go. It was about 2 years ago when we had this point with the Facebook Andromeda switch. Like I realized that my very controlling approach to running ads just no longer was the way.
So what do you mean when you say that?
Essentially, the simple version is Facebook did much better at targeting. That's the simple way of saying this. The reality is before it, I would set up campaigns where I would have each ad set would only have one ad in it. I would break up the budget extremely strictly and force Facebook to spend $5 on each of these different ads, each of these different audiences. So I'd be perfectly testing this matrix of like 9 audiences with 9 creatives in each of them. But now that just does not work. Like controlling Facebook doesn't let Facebook do what it does best. So nowadays, Facebook is very good at finding more customers that buy, as long as you've got that conversion data. So in the beginning on those smaller budgets, this doesn't work so well. So you still have to be more controlling of Facebook. But as you scale, that algorithm is extremely effective. So we'll often just have a campaign budget optimized campaign. We add an ad set with a variety of different creatives and or an audience. And then each week or two, we're going to add another ad set to that campaign and test new ideas. But we still just let Facebook go wherever it wants. And yeah, it's consistently outperforms kind of keeping that control to the ads manager nowadays.
Amazing. So Facebook is kind of on your side in a way. It's similar to organic. They want to pump the successful stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I think in the end, you know, something people worry about, I think they look too negatively on the platforms where Facebook is still an organic space, as in is looking to satisfy that user. And so if it doesn't want to be pushing horrible ads on its users, so it does reward you if you give genuinely great creative to the right person. In the same way with Google ads as well, they have their quality score system. So if I'm, Domino's Pizza and I'm trying to rank on Pizza Hut, I don't know if Pizza Hut's a thing in America or if that's a UK thing. When I'm like, there's two big competitors and I'm trying to take that pizza brand's customers, well, Google knows. Google knows that I am not that brand. I'm the other brand. And so it will give me a really low quality score. And so there is honesty in the algorithms as well.
Okay, intermediate tip number 2.
The biggest thing that we're working on right now, both for all sides of my business, is creative. So you said this earlier, and it's entirely correct, is especially with displays, Facebook ads in particular, creative is king. So the quantity that you have to produce nowadays has massively increased compared to how it used to be. And that is the answer. That is not hyperbole. Like, that is true and genuine, that more creative is better. But also you have to keep that quality high. If you just start spamming out AI rubbish, it will not work either. So what I see the best people doing, and what we're trying to do as an agency for people, is build these workflows. So it's not fully automated, because I think you can still get a better result by human plus AI. Like Jason Cohen talked about this. He said AI doesn't work, but it does with a human. Like, if you combine a professional with AI, that is the best result you can get. And so we do that with creative. I think building these massive machines that week after week after week, you're just pumping creative out. For example, we have a furniture brand. You build these really great 3D renders of the products, and then that combined with these various AI flows, that then means that once you built that system, you can just make essentially unlimited creative very cheaply and efficiently for not too much work. That's one of the biggest and most important parts to get right when you get into those bigger budgets higher up. Yeah.
How much do you guys weigh the technical side versus, like, the Mad Men side, like catchy catchphrase and lighting and counter positioning and all that kind of stuff?
I wish it was just all Mad Men stuff, because that was much more fun. I think that you start with the Mad Men. You start with the high level strategy, and you really take your time over that. So I think that is underrated. I think, when I speak to the best of the best in my industry, the people that I really admire and I think are way better than I am at any of this stuff, they always talk about brand. They always talk about like the story behind the creative, and really talking about that customer and the pain that they're feeling. The best marketers get that stuff right. And then even if it's the ugliest creative, it doesn't matter, because you hit that pain right.
Final tip, for the advanced folks, what would you say is advanced nowadays? You're doing, how much ad spend would you say when you're like a new client comes in, you're like, okay, this is an ads driven business?
E-commerce lives off of ads still, and it always has. And so I think, for them, it's the creative workflows. It's creative. That's the answer. Simply put, I think there's a lot of other things to it. So obviously the product mix that you're bringing into the ads, etc. But that is it. That plus the brand side of things, like not underinvesting in awareness and brand building exercises. For the B2B, for the kind of SaaS businesses, I think you're really trying to claim everything you can. We had, this wasn't me directly, but this was an ads manager that worked in my company. He worked for Stripe. He ran the Stripe ads account. And they just wanted to claim every single search that existed, essentially, for anything in their space. So it's kind of the Google ads, the Microsoft ads is the space to claim. If you're a SaaS business, I still stand by that. So you're kind of maxing that out. And depending on your business model, it depends on when you're going to hit that maximum. And then you move into Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads to kind of claim the rest of that market. And I think doing it that way around is the right move. I see some people trying to go too quickly into Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, or just diversifying too much, when actually you can probably spend 60 to 100K a month just on Google ads. And that's much more efficient of a path forward than spreading out into 16 different channels. And that's kind of an earlier tip I'd want to add to the people just starting out, is a lot of them try and start and they say to me, well, why don't I do 500 on Google and 500 on Facebook and 500 here? And I think that's the worst idea ever. Like, even if people want to work with me. Like, it's more expensive and I'd make more money if I did more platforms, but I generally tell them not to do that because ads is a money game. And the more you spread that money, the less effective it will be for you.
So for the DC, for example, if we came to you and we were like, hey, we have $1,000 a month to spend, your idea would be, would we go Google or we go Facebook, and why?
So I've daydreamed about this before because I think it'd be a really fun one to work on. So I think that the first thing is the simple one, which is a great win for anyone watching this, is remarketing, because remarketing is actually genuinely really cheap. Like, the DC website does not get hundreds of millions of people coming to it. And so you could cover anyone who comes to your website and leaves and follow them across Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere over the internet for, say, the next 90 days ahead, with great stories of the DC, videos of people talking about it, events that you've run, and that would work. Like, that is a really high intent people who have already shown interest. So that would be the first step. So you could probably spend potentially that entire 1,000 just on that, and that would be really effective.
So that's kind of the first step for anybody, right? Is get that pixel onto your visitors and just follow them around. We've all been followed around.
Exactly, yeah. And to be honest, there's a lot of DCers who are insanely good at YouTube or SEO or some other acquisition channel, which can be your top of funnel. So you might not even need to run top of funnel, and then you've got a complete funnel working already because your SEO is pumping in hundreds of thousands, and then you use your paid ads to remarket to those people. So that can also work as a nice kind of hybrid. And then it's like a few $100 a month or something, and you're covering that well.
So before we turn gears into agency stuff, a lot of us in the DC are DIYers. We're roll up the sleeves types. And what does that look like for a founder who's like, you know what, it's time for me I've got this channel, or I've got a network channel, and I think rather than going organic, I want to go paid, or I've got SEO and I want to go paid. What does the roll up the sleeves education path look like? How much money are we going to be into this thing for? How much time? What's a realistic roadmap for us seeing some good results? I guess the first step you just said, start with pixel remarketing campaign. That would be the first roll up the sleeves step. What does this journey look like for founders who aren't ad native?
I think it's a really good question. And honestly, having come to most DC events over the last 5 years or so, 6 years, whatever I've been in now, it's the hardest question because those first months are the most painful. Like, even if I, waved a wand and did it all for you and you had 10K to spend every month, like a bigger budget, it would still look horrible for those first couple of months. And so that's the most important thing, is knowing it will not look good for a while. I think the educational part, the things I've learned is find the people that are rock stars and pay them to teach you. Do not go to YouTube. Do not go to these other places. There's a reason why it's free. I reached out to people like, Vincent in the DC. He's an amazing Facebook ads guy. Other people who are amazing Google ads. And they taught me. I basically, anyone I can find who I think's better than me, I ask them to teach me. And so that's one path forward I think is worth it. I think the amount of money involved when it comes to ads is not a game that you can just throw money around easily. My simplest advice to kind of get to the what should you do today if you're going to run some ads, if you're SaaS, do a search campaign, do phrase match keywords, nice and tight, narrow targeting, go for the really obvious ones, and that's it. Nothing fancy, one campaign, one search campaign, put all your budget in it and do that. Maybe a brand campaign to add a little detail there. If you're an e-commerce brand, you can do a catch-all shopping campaign, which is basically just stick all your shopping into one single standard shopping campaign. Don't do performance max because it's too broad in the beginning, and that's it. Facebook ads for either of them can work, but I would stick with for SaaS, I would stick with search. But if you're e-commerce, I do think Facebook ads is a great place to start, and it is more beginner friendly. You can open up a Facebook account, you can create a campaign, put a couple of different ad sets in place with 2 different audience types, put 3 or 4 creatives in each of them, see what happens, learn what worked, iterate, put in some new creative that's more down that path of the thing that worked, and repeat and repeat and repeat, and you will get somewhere. So I think Facebook ads is a little bit more friendly in that way, that you can get going without so much professional help.
Very cool. The best productized agencies we know are run by small, lean teams doing serious revenue. And most of them are still juggling 5 tools that don't talk to each other. Your clients are emailing for updates. Your team is hunting through Slack for SOPs. And somewhere in there, you're supposed to be growing the thing. That's exactly the problem Wayfront was built to solve. You might know them as Service Provider Pro or SPP.co. Same team, same product, and now with a much bigger vision. Wayfront is an AI-ready operating system for productized services. Your clients get a white-labeled self-service portal for billing, onboarding, and reporting. Your team gets one dashboard with every project, message, and SOP in one place. All your data is AI accessible, so agents can actually help with real client work, not just busy work. Thousands of agencies have sold and delivered over $500 million in services through Wayfront. If your team is between 2 and 20 people or doing between $200,000 and $2 million a year, this is built for you. And because you're listening to the TMBA podcast, TMBA listeners get 1 month free on top of the trial. Check it out risk-free at wayfront.com/TMBA. Okay, so let's switch gears now. I want to talk about running an agency, which so many of us do, this transition to agentic. But I just want to start at the top with, you have some opinions about selling. I want to get a sense for why you're comfortable with sales. You never struck me as a salesy personality, yet you believe sales are probably the most important skill in business. Tell me how you learned them and what we can learn from you.
For sure, yeah. So I always describe myself as, if I think it's in my DC profile, as it, whenever you're saying in the masterminds, like, what can you give to other people? I arguably put sales first. When I was 21 years old, leaving university, I did my marketing degree, did some marketing interviews, did some sales interviews. The sales ones went much quicker, and I got 2 job offers, even though I was just kind of going for the practice. And then I had, 5 years in sales. And so I was hammering calls day after day, doing like 300 calls a day, hard telesales, basically, in media B2B sales. So the difficult answer is, if you really want to get good at sales, do that. So I think my old sales manager said, the best thing about sales is you have a really short little circle of learning. So you get to go from start to the end within seconds, practically. So I call someone up, I try out an intro, I get a reaction instantly, and I find out if that was good or bad. And then I, try the close. I find out instantly if that was good or bad. And so the best salespeople look at it as a game. They play. It's joy. Like I love it. It's a joy to me how I can, maneuver through this conversation to get to the result that I'm looking for. It is a game.
How can I be a value add to this person that I may be interrupting? There's a way that you can make their day better.
Yeah. I think the other biggest lesson to go almost away from sales is to say, you have to genuinely believe in your product. So in my first jobs that I had, the very first one, it was a great company, but I knew I was kind of burning the companies I was working with, because it was Woucher, this daily deals site like Groupon. And we were so aggressive with the commissions we requested from the hotels we worked with that I kind of just knew deep down this was not good. And I always say, you should believe in your product as much as you would believe in, like, I'm seeing you, Dan, in the second floor of a building and it's burning to the ground and I've got a ladder. I should believe in that ladder. I should believe in my product as much as I believe in that ladder. Like, it's required. I will not take no from you, Dan, that you require this ladder from me.
In the agency world, though, this requires some filtering, right? Because you also don't want to sell a big deal to the wrong client, because it creates so many headaches for you. So then how do you take that hardcore, like, I've got a ladder sales process, and how have you applied that to agency sales? And what have you observed in the community where those of us who maybe don't have that background, where we can improve? Do you still have a script, by the way? Do you have like systems for sales, or are you just winging it because you're a natural out there?
No, I at one point I was going to try and go back to scripts because I felt like I was bringing in a salesperson who was going to try and replace me. But in the end, it's just such a high leverage part of my business that, like, for me to not do it, it really should be the very last thing that I take away from me is handling calls with people. So to answer your question, another story actually from my beginning of my career, my favorite salesperson from my time at Travelzoo, he was infamous for being one of the best salespeople because he didn't give a he did not care at all about the sale. He would go into meetings with like Hilton hotels and he'd just be like, yeah, like this is the contract. This is how it works. Like, let me know if you want to do it. And that was it. And so I think a confidence is one of the most important parts of selling. As I've said before, believing in your product. Like, people say they don't know how to sell. They're not salespeople. That's so lean into your kind of genuine enthusiasm. Be genuine, like build a business that you're genuinely excited about and believe in. And then sales will just kind of naturally come out of that, I think. Yeah.
What about pricing and terms for agencies? What have you learned in terms of charging a retainer model, charging upfront? How do we collect money? What are some effective methods you've used in your agency?
So I remember giving a talk in Mexico, DC, Mexico, like a few years ago, and it was all about my up and then my down within my agency, where I had about a year and a half with one client in particular called Crunchy. It was a skincare brand in the US. So we got 10% of anything they made. We also did a great job. And so obviously that was spectacular. But I'll also tell you about the one that we did just after they canceled with us because they went for a cheaper agency. We got another company in, another skincare brand, very similar. And the first month, what did we make with them? $120. So it does not always go well. So the revenue share deal is interesting. And I think if you get the right partnerships, I think it's spectacular. And I'm definitely personally more interested nowadays in like trying to build shared partnerships where we can, if I succeed, if we all win, and if I don't succeed, you don't lose so much. I think there's a lot of value in that. But at the same time, if you're a newbie to the ads game, you're a kid out of university, you'll take any client. You'll charge low. And if you're a really good agency, you deliver really well, then you will obviously charge higher. And so for people listening and working with agencies, I think that's the thing to be careful of is like, the good deal is sometimes a good deal for a reason.
So for the majority of your clients, you're still doing retainer. Do you do any kind of like onboarding up front?
Yeah. So we have it's essentially based on revenue of, the ad spend. It's based on ad spend for each of the clients. And then we have a setup fee. And it's separate from search and display. So I just basically find that search is less work comparative to display. So display being Facebook ads and Instagram and TikTok, for the reasons we talked about, that creative is like a really big load work. We also have our creative production separate. So we have Snowball Studios within the agency. So this is like a kind of internal creative studio, just because I kind of recognize that really the game of ads is just as much the game of creative as it is ads. So we're trying to double down on that more. And we charge for that separately.
I want to talk about your pivot into AI because you've been Claude pilled or totally AI pilled. But just curious, a sales career is a very profitable thing to pursue. Yet you turned and bootstrapped an agency. And originally you were doing something different, right?
It was ecotourism. Yeah, the very first startup I had was an ecotourism one. I've got the logo still tattooed on my wrist.
So why? What's the story here? Why do that when you could be wearing a suit and banking big money?
I saw my sales manager. I saw what I was going to become. This man who was like 45 years old, the second half of his career. And he was, overweight, smashing Gaviscon to try and get through his day because he'd been drinking every day of the week with his like clients that he has to maintain the relationships with. Like it didn't appeal. And I just thought, I want something more than that. I want to do big things. I want to make an impact on the world. And I think an individual's impact is always so much less than a team's impact.
Speaking of teams, a lot of listeners are still kind of sidecarring AI. By sidecarring, I mean, they're going over to ChatGPT and they're you're asking it to edit things or doing some research on it. But that's kind of where a percentage of us, a lot of what we did down in Mexico was about crossing that chasm. Maybe you could describe what it was like for you to cross that chasm. So I know that's like a big question. I'm wondering if you can walk us through that journey, because it's one that a lot of us are anticipating going on.
My entire career has been, I'm the sales and marketing guy, is what I do. That's my superpower, but I can't code. And so many of the DC are in the same position, like people like Noel, for example, so many others I could mention.
So you're speaking of Noel Andrews from jobrack.com. He's actually posted some really cool AI stuff in the chat that I've noticed.
Yeah, me and him have both been chatting a lot about it. And obviously like John Ainsworth, for example, who you've had on the podcast. Like
from Data-Driven Marketing. He spoke at DC Mexico as well about his AI workflows.
So exactly. So these people, we are not the developers of the group, but now we are. Like I actually learned to code briefly through COVID. Just at the time, actually, I joined the DC community, but I was always that kind of junior developer, never able to really make a product because it was just too much of a commitment to really take myself away from the sales and the marketing stuff. And now I am unleashed. Like people like Noel, like we are absolutely unleashed on the world. Like the freedom we have to build anything we can dream of. And that is now possible. Like that is crazy. And it's so exciting. I personally feel especially lucky because I did have that period of learning to code enough that I understood Visual Studio Code. I understood my, frameworks I need and how things interconnect between each other, etc. So I did have that little bit of an advantage that I could jump in quicker. And so my answer has been literally building like the Snowball OS, which is a complete piece of software that is anything and everything I can think of that we do turned into software. Basically, that's the simplest way to describe it.
So you're talking about Snowball OS, which is like your core operating system for the agency. But then how did you turn that into what is essentially a startup?
So I have the Snowball Creations agency. That is, the agency is a human does it for you. And I'm trying to take the AI world and do what you should do as an agency in my eyes, which is dramatically level up everything. And the rate of progress there is just like continuously exponentially growing as we build out all these systems. And I think that's the job of an agency, is like you as Dan cannot be bothered to keep up with how the do I keep making these like beautiful women in videos talking about the DC community or whatever you're going to do. And then there's the other side though, which is exactly so much of this conversation is I'm like, I've just started this new SaaS and I don't know how the hell to get my first 100 customers and I need to get some ads up and running. And so the SaaS ad studio is for that entry point to allow somebody to just get going actually and have their first search campaign up and running. So yeah, that's the kind of angle, is like the agency is this explosion of like the new world of ads with a human at the helm. And then the SaaS ad studio is, can I just completely automate away the entire bottom of the entry point into ads? We call him Atlas as the AI within the tool. Atlas is essentially just going to slowly take over everything.
So with SaaSAdStudio.com, do you foresee like the platforms themselves building down your direction?
So I think that that's a classic question. And honestly, it's a very old one now because there's already been softwares like Optio, lots of others, which are optimization softwares for something like Google Ads. So technically Google 10 years ago could have started having good Google reps who tell you to do the right things. And suddenly I've not got a job and everyone's making loads of money and it's all good. But that doesn't happen. Like Google reps, if you Google reps suck, we are number one. We have an entire blog about this. We got a YouTube video about it. They suck. And so the reality is that even with Facebook ads, which is better at helping you with optimizations, Google is much worse. But either of them, they still have their bias towards them. Like they are not in the market for you. So you still will always need a third party, I think, to support you in that journey, to understand what's the right decisions for your particular account. So I think that that'll be the main line, the barrier between the two. Yeah.
Have you had team friction with introducing AI into the agency?
It was a few months ago, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and I sat them on a call on a Friday afternoon and said, we're going to get all of you on Claude if you're not already there, and we're going to get you in Visual Studio Code. Like, I didn't want to have any halfway house. They're all in on it. From that point, most of the team just exploded with a reaction in a very good way. Dan in particular, who's my head of ads for my agency, he just blew up with this whole kind of like personal infrastructure around him, like pulling all of the data out of all of the accounts, doing all sorts of really interesting stuff with scripts, etc. And actually, I think you mentioned this literally in the last episode, that's it. Like, if you're not on for the journey, you're off the bus. Like, it's a requirement of small business right now that you are, AI native, going all in on it. And the other thing I would say is just smaller teams. I'm hiring more experienced people, smaller numbers, doing more. That's kind of how I'm picturing the next year ahead. Partly because it makes sense and partly because it's nicer for me to manage.
For us, it's been actually like an increased camaraderie moment, because you go from following the SOPs to generating them and then figuring out what the next step is. So you do work on the system and the whole system gets better, and ideally you have a better, easier time doing your work in the future because of it.
Yeah, like Dan, again, my head of paid ads, I think we had 36 Zoom calls with, I can't even remember how many questions. And it was all of these different topics of ads. And so it was essentially this brain drain Zoom calls between me and Dan, where each of us would take turns to answer all of these questions. And then we took all of those as transcriptions and used this as this, like, essentially the ads manager brain. So in the Snowball OS, that now feeds into everything. So when we like use AI to produce a strategy, it takes that knowledge of me and Dan's brains. And so I think that does sound amazing for us as business owners, scary for the individual. But the reality is it's not, because I don't want to keep being the rock star of ads in the end. Like, I want Dan to do that with me. And it's not static. The game will always go up another level. And so me and Dan always have to keep improving those systems. So I don't think it is a threat, as long as you are like a real A player who's doing great work for the brand that you're working at.
I'm curious if you have any like business or personal financial tips or warnings, like big mistakes or big good things that you've done in your career that maybe you would give to yourself 10 years ago, or a founder listening right now that they could learn from your experience.
The one that comes to mind is another DC lesson. So DC is giving me a lesson, one at a time. And a really important one for me was a mistake I made, which I think I'm probably in the minority, but I think it's still valuable for a group of them, is the flexibility of your workforce. So the power of contractors, I know Laura Roeder talks about this a lot nowadays, is that in my earlier years of my agency, I was going for the more kind of classic startup approach of like full-time employees on PAYE, very hard to get rid of, very stable. And that caused me real problems many times over the years, because of course, when revenue's good, they're all good, but sometimes there's dips. And if you've got this very static workforce, then it's very difficult. And so I just think of that because my personal finances, really suffered in those times. Like, because we're so interlinked to our businesses. If our business's finances are good, then our finances are good. That's kind of how it feels to me anyway. And so I think that's been my biggest lesson recently, is trying to have a lot more flexibility. So now all of my ads managers, except for Dan, are on a contractor performance basis. So they're per client. So if our clients drop off, then the costs drop off with that. So that's been quite big for me. Yeah.
That's a great one. So I've heard it called like capacity risk. How does your model adjust to demand instantly? And it's a really good one to underline, because it wasn't the way I was taught to do business, and it wasn't the way I saw it demonstrated by many people I admire. You can't get docked in the business world or in society for saying, we're doing everything we can to retain our team. The reality of the situation is I'm not doing everything possible to retain your job. I'm empowering you to retain your job by letting you know the truth of the situation, by allowing you to respond, giving you flexibility to take on other work depending on your role around here. So I think there's a lot of different ways we can think about this classic moral conundrum of your first job is to retain everyone's role at the company.
Yeah, I think it's being almost like a fatherly thing with some people I know as well who do the same thing. It's like you want to protect, and so you think that that's being the nice guy who doesn't ever let go of someone because you want to protect them from loss of their job. But being the good guy is understanding they've already lost it, the job's already gone, and it's much better for both sides if they move on and find that next opportunity than staying in this thing.
All right, Max Sinclair from Snowball Creations, we appreciate you coming on the TMBA podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.